This is a sports catastrophe production.
Hey there, hello there. It's Jeff Carter Driver welcoming you to another sports catastrophe on this day. And on this day, March 23rd, 1991, a new football league started. No, it wasn't the AFL. No, it wasn't the USFL. No, it wasn't even the World Football League. It was the World League of American Football. It was weird and all that. Is that, you would have U.S. Not just U.S. teams, but teams from other countries compete in this. The history of this league was huge. They proposed the Intercontinental Football League in the 1970s that would have elements of the eventual All-European League. There was some NFL players who would have went to the Intercontinental Football League. And they actually had teams in Barcelona, Rome, Berlin, West Berlin, of course, because of the wall, Munich, Vienna, and Istanbul working it out. But unfortunately, because of economic and political reasons, they couldn't do it. However, in 1989, NFL owners actually unanimously voted that the World League of American Football would be formed. They called it a Spring Developmental League, the brainchild of the new commissioner of the NFL, Paul Tagliabue, who took over from Pete Rozelle. Basically, after the NFL had played popular American Bowls, or basically preseason games at Wembley Stadium in London and elsewhere since 1986, that fans were happy about that. 26 of the 28 NFL teams would pay $50,000 in startup costs for the World League of American Football. Team payrolls and budgets were controlled by an office, but not all teams were owned by the league. It would own 5 and partially own 3. The World League of American Football was set up as a professional American Football League for North America and Europe, consisting of 6 teams from the United States, 3 from Europe, and 1 Canadian team. Moscow and Japan were hoping to get rosters and all that. So the teams were in 3 divisions and all that. 1 division had 4 teams and 2 had 3. The North American West one had Birmingham, Sacramento, and San Antonio. The North American East had Montreal, New York/New Jersey, Orlando, and the Raleigh-Durham Skyhawks, who would be replaced by Ohio, the Ohio Glory 1919. And in Europe, it was Barcelona, Frankfurt, and the London Monarchs. The WLAF played 2 seasons in the spring of 91-92. 10 teams would play a 10-game regular season culminating with the World Bowl championship game. Rules unique to the WLAF was increasing point value to field goals based on distance, and a requirement that at least 1 non-American player must participate in every other set of downs. And ideas were successfully tested, such as the 2-point conversion that basically was in college football and the CFL until the NFL finally decided to adopt it in 1994. There were some tweaks, a shorter kickoff tee, and technical innovations such as helmet-mounted cameras and one-way radials were also developed. The average attendance wasn't that bad, about 24,000 both leagues. But the WLAF was barely noticed in the United States, having a minor league or developmental image and bad TV ratings. However, in London, Barcelona, and Frankfurt, and Montreal, attendance records would surpass early expectations. And London's home attendance led the league, and the World Bowl was held in front of 61,000 people, which was amazing. Well, of course, Montreal would have better crowds because, they didn't have a CFL team, despite what people think. The Montreal Alouettes were in financial troubles. They changed their name to the Concords and tried to change their fortunes. But by 86, they were running out of money. In 87, they folded. And for 9 years, Montreal didn't have a CFL team. But thankfully, thanks to Baltimore getting an NFL club via Cleveland, there was no need for the CFL team in Baltimore or in America for that matter. So basically, CFL USA was basically done and dusted. Jim Spanos, the owner of the Baltimore Colts, sold it to Montreal Interest, and Montreal finally got their CFL team back after 9 years away from it. And the Alouettes actually ended up being a decent team. And all that. The playoff format had 4 teams, the 3 divisional champion plus the best wildcard team. The 2 teams from the semis would meet in the World Bowl. And the first 2 World Bowls were predetermined before the season. But operations were suspended after 92, their second season, because the league lost money and the NFL owners didn't want to invest in it. However, the NFL needed another pro football league to help the cause in the antitrust and free agency lawsuit with the Players Association. So Barcelona would take on Birmingham in one semifinal and beat them 10-3, whereas London crushed the New York Knights 42-26. In an all-Europe final, London took down Barcelona 21-0. But the problem was that for everything that happened, though 3 Europe-based teams dominated 91, Barcelona, Frankfurt, and London, with a combined 24-6 mark, no American team managed better than 5-5. The Skyhawks would lose all 10 games and all that. Kind of stupid, don't you think? So after World War 91, they decided to go ahead with the second season and all that. In 1992, fortunes changed, and the European teams didn't have winning seasons. But the fans remained loyal. Paul Tagliabue wanted to bring back the World League of American Football with only European teams in 94 because, they wanted an ambiance of a spring football league, but didn't want to rival the NFL. Sacramento and San Antonio left the World League of Association Football to basically secure franchises in the CFL because when the CFL decided to expand to the U.S. in 1993, Sacramento would play in the CFL for 3 years. San Antonio had a chance, but I think they only had one season in the CFL. Sacramento would beat Orlando to get to win the World Bowl 92 in Montreal. Basically, things changed all that. After the World League was suspended for 2 years, they decided to have one based entirely in Europe. 6 teams would be in there. London, Barcelona, and Frankfurt, the 3 existing European teams in the World League, would be joined by 3 new teams. Amsterdam, Dusseldorf, and Edinburgh. Well, Scotland wanted it. In the wake of Fox's new contract to broadcast NFL games, Fox actually became a co-owner of the World League and a financial contributor in terms of broadcasting rights. It was amazing and all that. But league attendances less 15,000. London would have to leave Wembley Stadium because of cost, size, and availability. And the team's home games were played at White Hart Lane in 95-96. Sadly, though, White Hart Lane's field was only 93 yards long. So the WLAF had to have an exemption from the usual rules. I mean, honestly, how could you react to that game and all that? 93 yards. They couldn't have 120-yard field and end zones. But basically, they tried the World League's era and all that. They even had some star players. London signed William Fisher Perry, and Scotland's kicker was one of the star captains of the rugby union, Gavin Hastings. Unfortunately, WLAF markets just didn't live up to the potential and all that. The league would become NFL Europe and basically become a developmental league for a lot of teams and all that. However, NFL Europe started off great as Kurt Warner and Jake Delhomme actually were quarterbacks in the European League in the late 90s. Kurt played for Amsterdam, Delhomme played for Frankfurt. All that. So basically there were a lot of issues and all that. So they tried their best to keep things going in Europe, but it just didn't work out for the best. All that. There were some rules for the World League of American Football that were huge. In the 90s, NFL overtime was a single quarter sudden death with the first team scored being the winner. And a game can end in a tie. Most teams scored in 15 minutes. However, the overtime would last for 10 minutes, and each team must have the possession at least once. Kind of like what the overtime rules are in the NFL now. If the first team who possessed the ball scored, the other would have a chance to either equalize or win the game. All that. There were only 2 ties in World League / NFL Europe history. The league tried to award 4 points to a team for field goals of more than 50 yards. And all that. There would be some national players involved. LeVar Ball, the father of Lonzo, Leandro, and LaMelo, actually played for the London Monarchs in football. Nice. So anyway, TV wasn't that much. USA Network would carry a lot of things. ABC actually broadcast some games, mostly on Sunday afternoons, from the USA Network and all that. Canada would have RDS, like French TSN, all that. Fox would broadcast NFL Europe games from 95 to 05. All that. So yeah. Nice to see. So, how about some famous players who played in the 91 and 92 World League of Football seasons and all that? Well, let's see if we have some very nice players. Let's see here. Doug Marone, who was a good offensive lineman, he played for the London team in the. Oh yeah, Doug Marone. He used to coach the Jaguars. He played in the 91 season for London. Bruce Clark. I think Bruce Clark played in the NFL, didn't he? In the NFL? Yeah, he played in the NFL for some times in the 1980s, but he decided to play for Barcelona. Tracy Simeon played for the Montreal squad in 1981. He was a good TCU player and also played for the Kansas City Chiefs for a time being. So, yeah. Chris Moore actually was the punter. Before he played for Buffalo, he was the kicker for the Montreal Machine. That's amazing. Because Buffalo fans like Chris Moore being kicker. Bjorn Nitmo, who was a very good kicker in the preseason in the NFL, would kick for Montreal, which was nice. Victor Abuduuke, who was a legend in London Monarch circles, played then. And let's see, some other legendary players. Not really going to talk about that. So anyway, yeah, the World League of American Football was basically a very good idea. And, it helped Kurt Warner jumpstart his career. And he ran a football league too, but, all praise to it. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.